Good evening. I'm Jim Zirin. This is The Digital Age. Tonight's show is about the dark side of the internet. Identity theft, fraud, invasion of privacy, hacking, a parade of horribles we all worry about. With me tonight is Steve Wyer. Steve Wyer has written a fascinating book entitled Violated Online, which talks about these perils and also talks about some simple rules as to how we can protect ourselves. Steve Wyer, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Now, congratulations on your book, which I found to be very, very interesting. Why don't you tell us something about your background and how you came to write it?
Well, I literally ended up in this business because I was my own first client.
Now, this business is what?
Online reputation management. For 25 years, I was a businessman. Owned my own business, very successful, no issues to speak of. And about a decade ago, I ended up in litigation. That litigation drug out, but within days of those allegations being filed in the court, they were made a matter of public record and ended up online.
What's the nature of the litigation?
In our case, I have a securities background, and we ended up in litigation with the Securities Exchange Commission. It took 3 years for the courts to begin ruling in our favor. That litigation drug on for years. We prevailed on almost every aspect of the litigation. But the initial filings found online, because it was the federal government, the first 4 pages of my search results were those federal allegations. It wasn't until page 5 that there was any mention of us prevailing.
So what did you feel you needed to do about that?
Well, that's a good question. The content online ended up literally putting us out of business. And so while the litigation drug on and we prevailed in almost every way, we went out of business. And I came to the conclusion that unless I could determine a way to influence what was online about me, that my future in that industry would be very limited.
So you reinvented yourself?
I reinvented myself. I became my own first client. I could find no resource that really understood much about what was going on in terms of the way information makes its way to the internet, why it ends up on page 1, why is it so dominant. And so I hired some smart people and began the process to learn what might be done for me. And about the time I got done with my search results, I turned around and there were 1 million other people just like me.
Well, let's look at the world before there was an internet. The SEC would file a case. I guess they charged you, as they always do, with securities fraud. You answered. There was discovery and their motions, and all these find their way into a court file somewhere, which is accessible. And that would be true of other people that are involved in litigation before the internet.
Yes.
Now, what is there about the internet that changes the mix?
Well, what's interesting in the court system today, and this is true at a city, county, state, and federal level, is that the courthouses are working very diligently to get rid of paper. They want to join the digital age just like the rest of us. What that looks like in many cases is documents are being scanned and placed online. What you used to have to do in terms of going to a courthouse, securing files, going to a file room, making copies in order to have that information, now you can find all of that information with just a few clicks on a keyboard.
So before the internet, if I wanted to find out what was the litigation history, if any, of Steve Wyer, I'd have to hire someone or myself go to every courthouse in the country and search the public files.
That's right.
And now I can do it simply with a click.
On a national basis.
So that changes things.
It does.
Now what happens if, suppose often in litigation files are sealed, court orders are files sealed because there's something there that's scandalous or something there that might hurt someone's reputation. This typically happens in matrimonial matters.
Yes.
Now, if it's sealed by the court, does that mean that it still remains online?
If it's sealed by the court, the actual order may be sealed. However, what really is troublesome to people is that at the time that allegations are filed, before there's any outcome of litigation, the thing that really gets people is that the media grab it now. And so you'll have television or you'll have newspaper reports that go out about the initial actions. That information is a matter of public record, and so media files stay online forever. So if there's a newspaper report, a television report, and the outcome is in the defendant's favor, the initial allegation, the initial report, the initial article will remain online.
But what's the real harm? I mean, suppose you had remained in that business and a client came to you and said, you know, Steve, I'd like to deal with you, but I read online that you had been charged with fraud by the SEC. You say to him, yes, but here's the rest of the record. I was cleared of fraud and there was nothing to it. Isn't that enough? What is the mischief of perpetuating something online that's true and that people would have access to anyway?
Let me give you 2 illustrations. First of all, the assumption that we have to make is that people are lazy. And by that I mean that they read meta tags, they read headlines. We are a headline culture. And so consequently, when you find initial search results,
or a soundbite culture.
You're definitely sound bites. And so you see that meta tag. And whatever that meta tag says, you are drawing a conclusion. The click-through rate, the people that actually go and read and research an outcome, is very low. A conclusion is drawn based on what they see in that meta tag. Let me give you an illustration. We recently represented someone in the medical profession, a doctor, who the allegations were that there was sexual impropriety in the hospital. He was arrested, he was charged, he was cuffed, he was walked out of the hospital to the news cameras.
Perp walk.
He did the perp walk.
Just like DSK.
That's right. After that, depositions, jury trial, totally, completely exonerated. As a matter of fact, so completely exonerated, his record was expunged because his accuser had done the exact same thing a decade before in a different city to a different doctor. His credibility was regained. However, if you were to search that doctor today, on page 1 of his search results, all of the newspaper reports, all of the TV reports, and it's right there on page 1. There's absolutely no mention of him being exonerated, the record being expunged, or him being innocent.
But don't you think if it ever came up that he would be able to inform people, or his lawyers would be able to inform people that this was the case? Because there's certainly a record that he was exonerated. Just as in DSK, if I put DSK into Google, I'm going to find out about the sex charges, and I'm going to find out that the DA dropped the charges.
Yes.
So then I can draw my own conclusion as to whether he's a good guy or a bad guy.
In the case
or should be president of France.
In the case of the doctor, the question is, will anyone ask or seek the truth, or will they draw a conclusion based on what they see? Our experience is that most people draw conclusions, initial conclusions, based purely on the search results, what they see on page 1. Statistically, less than 15% of people go to page 2 and less than 2% of people go to page 3. So the search results that are on page 1 are what people by and large are drawing conclusions on. The question is, what is there that you can influence? What is there that's true? And what is there that's false?
Well, there's something called a search engine optimization company, an SEO.
In SEO.
And you're an SERM, search engine reputation management company.
Yes.
But an SEO has the ability to put the link that you want at the head of the list, isn't that right? So if I think I'm the greatest plumber in the world, I hire an SEO and he puts me right at the top of the list. Now, can't you do that as an SERM and put the exoneration right up there with the charge?
In terms of search engine optimization, the goal of all search engine optimization is to influence page rank. So if I am a plumber, what I want people to find is I want them to see my website on page 1. And so what I want to do is promote my single website. With search engine reputation management work, what we're trying to do is influence the negative content and suppress it. Take it down to page 2 so that the positive content can come up to page 1.
Let's talk about statements on the internet unlike public record of litigation, which is largely true. I mean, it's true that these charges were leveled against you, and that's published. But suppose something false is published. Suppose I put on a blog, Steve Wyer is a bank robber, and you do a search on yourself, and lo and behold, the first link is my blog, Steve Wyer is a bank robber. What do you do about that?
Well, that's a great question, because online slander, whether it's a forum, a blog, an opinion site, a rating site, most every site that you would find stands on the First Amendment, which is freedom of speech. And so
well, that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. There's a shadow side to that, and there's a positive side to that. The shadow side to that is that accusations, allegations can be made anonymously online. If I were to make an allegation,
say you got your job through nepotism, and how do you refute it?
That's right. Well, or I can file a complaint about you and sign it Mickey Mouse. People will place value in the complaint, and they'll set aside who filed it. And so there's a certain anonymity to allegation online that occurs.
Well, that's at the heart of the First Amendment. Our founding fathers were pamphleteers, and they published their pamphlets anonymously. That was the whole idea.
They did.
If their names had been on the pamphlets, they would have been executed.
That's right. Well, but in today's media, if I were to offer an opinion about you in the press, on any radio station, and I were to make allegations that I believed were true, you would have recourse against me, and there would be a forum to resolve the dispute.
Well, and against the newspaper.
And against the newspaper.
And a reputable newspaper would not publish something unless they felt there was a basis
That's
for
right.
it.
That's right.
But you can put anything on the net. Steve Wyer is a bank robber, you can just put it up there and it's there on the blog.
Right. That's right.
Now, can you sue Google for putting on Google a link to my blog that contains something that's made up of whole cloth and is off the wall?
Well, Google is a search engine. So Google only indexes content and delivers content. The content is posted on a website. So your first point of contact or attempt to resolve something is going to be on that website. Now, every website, or most credible websites, all have terms and conditions. So if you were to go to the bottom of the landing page on any website, you'll find a terms and conditions link. The first thing to do is see if the content posted about you is a violation of the site's own terms and conditions. Many times on the bigger sites that is the case. And if you point that out to them, if you politely request removal,
or a demand to take it down,
or a takedown demand, depending on how aggressive you want to be, then many times reputable sites will do it. The real challenge comes in blogs, because anybody can have a blog and anybody can express opinion on a blog. And if it's my blog and I believe that orange ties are offensive, and I put that on there, there's little you can do unless you work on the other side of the equation, which is to work to make sure that your blog doesn't come up high in the search results. If your blog shows up on page 5 or 6 of the search results for me, very few people are going to see it. And so that's the approach.
So that's really what you do. Make sure that it's low down on the search results.
That's right. That's right.
And because if you really want to take on slander or a libel or defamation head on, you run the risk that it's just going to cause the libel to be repeated and repeated and repeated, and maybe the slanderer will become more vicious and there'll be more bad things said about you, and then you get into a contest with them that isn't good for you. So isn't it better just to ignore the whole thing?
Well, many times the first train of thought is, I want to sue somebody, I want to litigate. There's a very narrow body of law that governs all of this right now, and it's all relatively new law. You've got cost constraints, you've got time constraints, and as you point out, the entire time you're in that traditional process, the content remains online, and in fact, you may become an adjutant, and more content will be placed online. So we always tell people—
An agitator. You may become an agitator and provoke them to be even more vicious than they were originally.
Our recommendation is never respond to a complaint. Never file a rebuttal. If you file a rebuttal, even though it's articulate, it looks as though you're protesting too much, and you may provoke further postings,
So
further
the
negative
strategy is to
content.
hunker down in the trenches.
Hunker down.
Hunker down in the trenches. Now, let's move on to privacy, the P word, because that's very important to people on the net. You write in your book, quote, our basic rights to privacy are being run over by data aggregators, cookies on our computers, and profiteers that cash in on our suffering. I have sadly come to the conclusion that there is no one out there who is going to protect us. We have to do this ourselves. How do we do this? What are the defenses we need to protect ourselves and preserve our privacy?
Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to know what's out there.
How do I know what's out there?
You need to do a search on your own name. And when I say do a search on your own name,
I hope it says digital age for me.
there you go. Well, so you do first name, middle name, last name, and then any accreditation. So doctors need to look at MD, they need to look at Dr. DR, because any given professional may have 3 or 4 or 5 iterations of their name. And you need to look at the search results for all of those because they'll be very different. The second thing you need to understand is that just because you haven't gone out and built websites, profile sites, and social sites for yourself does not mean you're not online. There's information out there about you because it's all a matter of public record.
So if I'm a very secretive, private person, they can still find out things online about me anyway. My political contributions, that's there.
Yes. Religious affiliations, you go to a site like Spokio.com. Spokio.com is a data aggregator. They give parameters for your gross income, for your real estate values, political persuasions.
Where I live, my
where
age,
you live.
maybe my phone number,
grab
email
your-
address.
Yeah.
So I have all that anyway. So what
It's
risk
all
do
out
I
there.
take going on Facebook?
The very first thing you want to do is you want to make sure it's accurate. And if it's not accurate, then you want to attempt to correct it.
All right, so suppose Spokio has my wrong address. So I write to Spokio and say, please correct this. They'll ignore it.
You can't, well, it's certainly the first attempt.
Right.
Again, what we're always going to suggest is that you proactively go out and build profile sites for yourself with good, solid, transparent information.
So I go on Facebook and I build a profile site and I give them all sorts of information like my date of birth, which can be used by someone to get my social security number.
Yes.
And I give them my digital Rolodex so they find out who all my friends are and who the friends of friends are, and they have all that. Tell me if I'm being paranoid. And then I put up some pictures of my family. And now you advise against putting up pictures of your family.
I do, and I would say to you, I wouldn't start with Facebook.
Oh, you wouldn't?
No, I think Facebook probably is more intrusive than any social site out there. I might start with a site like LinkedIn, which is a professional social site, and it's a closed site so that comments and information can be monitored and regulated in a more complete way. Regarding pictures, what I say to folks is you need to be deliberate about what you're going to put online and what you're not going to put online. As an example, always recommend that you have more than one email address. So when you're going out on social sites and profile sites, use an email address that's appropriate. Keep another email address for friends and family and the people that you want to have access
So
to you.
all of us have to begin leading 2 lives, a digital life and a private life.
That's what I say is you
Now
have a public life and a private life. That's
Now,
right.
the dangers in Facebook, I guess you're familiar with the case of Ambassador John Sowers, was the British ambassador to the United Nations. He had a very beautiful actress wife, and she loved Facebook and put on Facebook pictures of herself at the beach with her children.
Yes.
And where these were taken with the family home in Brighton, and which was identifiable. Then Sowers was going to be appointed head of MI6, the British Secret Service.
Mm-hmm.
And the pictures were thought to be compromising, might endanger his family, and it presented a serious problem for him, which he eventually overcame. As far as I know, the pictures of Sowers' wife are still on the internet.
One of the issues you've got, obviously you speak too well, is your security settings on Facebook. What you have to understand is that images can be taken. So if they're out there on one site, I can take that image, I can place it on another site. I can replicate an image, simply cut and paste the image. You have to be deliberate. For my family, we choose not to put pictures of our children on the site, on any sites. We do share pictures, digital pictures with family, but we have ways of doing that. We've been very deliberate about it. The
Well,
same would be true.
what are the ways of doing that? I mean, if I upload family pictures to Picasa, for example, which is run by Google, and suddenly I find them on the internet.
Yes, you would want to find a site where you can very methodically set your privacy settings so that only the people that are specifically invited in have access to the information.
Well, one of the problems is, particularly with Facebook, is that all the privacy settings and privacy controls change all the time.
They do.
Tell us about that.
They do. Well, I think that many people get lulled into the assumption that because they checked their privacy settings 6 months ago, that everything is good. And what we know about Facebook and other social sites is that they're continually changing their settings, and that you need to be very vigilant in terms of going back and checking. If you simply Google the term current Facebook security settings, you will get search results that'll give you links to the most current settings.
So the fact that I've limited certain information to friends, that could open up completely if they change the rules on me without my knowing it.
It could definitely change people's access to information, and not only the public, but also advertisers.
Yeah. Now, let's move on to emails. I send you an email. That's like a personal letter between the two of us. And I say, Steve, come on my program, and we'll do a taping. And you send me an email back, a reply, yes, I'd love to. Now, that's just between us. Of course, who cares about that other than you and me, maybe a few others. But Google, I think you say, reserves the right to, if we're using Gmail, to scan those emails and file them away and give them to the government or anyone else. I don't know who would want to see it, but it's there for anyone, for a third party to see, isn't that right?
The information that's in email, your email service provider, whether it's Google or Yahoo or another party, when you open up that email account, you agree to terms and conditions, and of course we know how we do terms and conditions. You scroll all the way to the bottom and you hit accept. You do that
and
quickly.
No one ever reads it.
They never read them.
No.
But if you go into those terms and conditions and look at them carefully, in most cases you're giving away your rights. And among those rights is the right for the email provider to retain your emails, to retain your communications for some period of time. Those policies have changed over time. Google, Yahoo, Bing, all of them have different policies. But it's entirely possible that the information is housed for some period of time. Now, here's what's more interesting. Twitter has become very, very popular.
Yes, it has.
It's grown exponentially, and right now, my understanding is we do about 1 billion tweets a week. What most people don't know is that the middle of last year, the folks at Twitter committed to the Library of Congress every single tweet since the inception of Twitter in 2006.
Oh boy, I'm in the Library of Congress now. That's really terrific.
Every single tweet from the inception of the company, 1 billion a week, is being archived in the Library of Congress. And of course, the Library of Congress is owned, as we know, by our government. So I think a misconception about tweeting is...
So you mean I can go to the Library of Congress, and I assume they have some kind of digital search, and find every tweet that has been filed there. Is that right?
I can't represent to you that you can gain access to it. What I can...
Who gets access to it?
Well,
the FBI, the CIA?
That's a question I can't answer, but I think those are very good questions.
I mean, have you ever read some of these tweets? I'm going to have lunch today. That's a tweet.
It is.
And the most banal comments you could think of. I mean, who in heck is interested in that?
There's a very interesting article I just read recently talking about some social scientists that have done a broad study on tweets, studied some 500 million tweets in a window of time, that have basically determined that you can take the emotional temperature of the country based on tweet trends. And so they gave simple examples, like people are in a better mood in the morning than they are in the afternoon. They're in a better mood in the
And all that winds
weekends.
up in the Library of Congress.
As I understand it, it's all housed.
Okay. New one on me, but I think it's very interesting. Let's
It
talk
is.
about cyber stalking. Old boyfriends, old girlfriends. This happens. People, and what's interesting is that really Google and the federal government really don't care about all this stuff. It's
No.
people you know who care about this stuff, who are trying to get the goods on you or find out something about you. Cyberstalking, looking up old girlfriends. My friend David Kirkpatrick from Fortune magazine, who was on our show, called them retrosexuals. And they are trying to find out information. Is there something you can do to have some kind of privacy on the internet from things like that?
It depends on where the information is coming from. Again, what I'm going to suggest to you is that you validate the information that's online, and if, as an example, a phone number is there that you don't want there, you get it removed. You want to make sure that you're managing the channels of communication that you have. But it's not uncommon at all for a classmate from 20, 30, 40 years ago to find you online. The question is, do you respond? That's always a good place to begin with friends of mine, male friends of mine, that will get an email, and their first question, which is an appropriate question, is, do I even respond?
Okay, we have to wrap up, and we're running out of time, so I have a question for you, Steve Wyer. And the question is, other than internet abstinence, what is the best way I can protect myself on the internet?
Be proactive.
Be proactive. That's the answer.
That's it.
And thank you for coming by, Steve Wyer.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate
thank you for coming by. Tune in next week for more on the digital age. For the digital age, I'm Jim Zirin. Good night. All the best. Don't forget to visit our website, www.digitalage.org.